Today's topic is cerebrospinal fluid and cerebral circulation. So, first we will discuss CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. So, basically, it cushions the brain, and with blood brain barrier, CSF has a buffering function of neuroglia. It controls CNS circulation and extracellular environment of the neurons. Now, composition of CSF, it contains sodium, potassium, chloride, glucose, and protein. So there are difference between lumbar CSF and blood. Okay, composition differences. Sodium in lumbar CSF, it is 148 milliequivalent per liter. In blood, it is about 136 to 145 milliequivalent per liter. In lumbar CSF, potassium is 2.9 and in blood it is 3.5 to 5. Chloride in lumbar CSF, it is 120 to 130 and in blood it is 100 to 106 milliequivalent per liter. Now glucose in CSF, it is 50 to 75 milligram per dl. Blood 70 to 100 milligram per dl. Protein is about 15 to 45 and in blood protein is about 6.8 into 10 raised to 3 milligram per dl. pH of CSF is 7.3 and blood pH it is 7.4. Now CSF volume and pressure. The cranial cavity contains about 140 ml CSF, 100 ml of blood and 200 ml of extracellular fluid. The volume of CSF within the cerebral ventricle is about 40 ml and in subarachnoid space it is about 100 ml. The pressure in CSF column is about 120 to 180 mm water in recombinant position. Rate of formation of CSF is about 0.35 ml per minute. Now formation of CSF, it is mainly formed by choroidal plexus. Choroidal plexus are located in cerebral ventricle, okay, like a lateral ventricle, third ventricle and fourth ventricle, and about 500 ml of CSF is secreted per day. Now circulation of CSF. CSF is formed in lateral ventricles, okay, and it passes through interventricular foramina of Monro into the third ventricle. Then fluid flows through cerebral aqueduct of Sylvius into the fourth ventricle, and from fourth ventricle some CSF passes into central canal of spinal cord and most of CSF escape into subarachnoid spaces. Okay, so now some CSF which is passes through central canal and some majority of through subarachnoid space through foramen of Magendie of fourth ventricle and two lateral aperture of fourth ventricle. It is also known as a foramen of Luschka. So you can see in this figure circulation. Okay. So first site of formation, it is lateral ventricle. Okay, so this is lateral ventricle. Okay, site of formation of CSF. Now circulation. Okay, after formation of CSF here, okay, so it passed through this interventricular foramina, okay, which is known as a foramina of Monro. Okay, so this is third ventricle and this is lateral ventricle. So in between there is a space which is known as a foramina of Monro, interventricular foramina, and from here means from third ventricle CSF pass through aqueduct of Sylvius. Okay, so this is aqueduct of Sylvius into the fourth ventricle. So this is fourth ventricle. Okay, now from fourth ventricle some CSF passes into the central canal of the spinal cord, and most of CSF escape into the subarachnoid space, okay, which is surrounding the brain and spinal cord. So it is mainly through median aperture. Okay, so this is foramina of Magendie. Okay, basically it is foramina of Magendie. So majority of CSF pass through this foramina, some escape into the central canal of the spinal cord. Now from this foramina of Magendie of fourth ventricle and to lateral aperture of fourth ventricle, okay, which is known as a foramina of Luschka, okay, into the subarachnoid space, okay, so which is present around the brain and spinal cord. Okay, so like this. Okay, so this is subarachnoid space, okay, so around the brain. So this is circulation. Now subarachnoid cistern, it refers to the regions where subarachnoid space is distended to form pools of CSF. So example is lumbar cistern, which surrounds the lumbar and sacral spinal root below the level of termination of spinal cord. The lumbar cistern is a target for lumbar puncture. It is procedure used clinically to collect sample of CSF. Now absorption of CSF, it is mainly occur through valvular arachnoid villi into the dural venous sinuses in the cranium. Rate of absorption is direct function of the CSF pressure, so it depends on a pressure. Functions of CSF: protection to central nervous system by acting as a water jacket as it absorbs shock in the event of blow. Second function is removal of waste product of the brain metabolism. Third, regulates the extracellular environment for the neurons of the central nervous system. And fourth function is transport hormones and hormone releasing factors. Now applied aspect: hydrocephalus and lumbar and cisternal puncture. So first, hydrocephalus, it refers to abnormal accumulation of CSF in the cranium. What are the causes? It is mainly due to obstruction of CSF circulation. If there is excessive production of CSF and interference with the absorption of CSF. Okay, so these are the reason for hydrocephalus. Types: internal or non-communicating hydrocephalus, and another is external or communicating hydrocephalus. So what is internal or non-communicating hydrocephalus? It occurs when obstruction is within the ventricular system or in the roof of fourth ventricle. It results in dilatation of the ventricles. External or communicating hydrocephalus, it occurs when obstruction is in subarachnoid space or arachnoid villi. In it, excess fluid is mainly in the subarachnoid space. The arachnoid granulation often suffer from moderate obstruction in patients suffering from cerebral meningitis or hemorrhage into the subarachnoid space. Now another applied aspect is lumbar and cisternal puncture. Lumbar puncture refers to tapping of CSF from lumbar system, and CSF examination is required in many disorders of central nervous system. It is performed by inserting a needle in between the L2 and L3 or L3 and L4 vertebrae. Cisternal puncture refers to tapping of CSF from cisterna magna. To do this, needle is passed through posterior atlanto-occipital membrane forwards and upwards to a depth of 4.5 cm from the surface. Okay, so these are the site from where CSF is collected. Now another topic is cerebral circulation. Now what are the points? Cerebral blood vessels, okay, arteries of the brain and venous drainage of the brain, and cerebral blood flow, measurement of cerebral blood flow and regulation of cerebral blood flow. So now we will discuss in detail cerebral blood vessel. Okay, arteries of the brain. It is derived from two internal carotid arteries and basilar arteries. So branches of internal carotid arteries and of basilar artery anastomose on the inferior surface of the brain to form circular arteriosus. It is known as a circle of Willis. Okay, so in this figure you can see here, this is circle of Willis at the inferior surface of the brain, and it is mainly formed by branches of internal carotid and basilar. Okay, so here is the internal carotid artery and basilar arteries. Now circle of Willis, it is basically free anastomosis between the two internal carotid arteries and two vertebral arteries, which equalize the pressure on the arteries of the two sides. And so this way circular arteriosus allows blood that enters by either internal carotid or vertebral artery to be distributed to any part of both cerebral hemisphere. 6 large arteries taking part in formation of circle of Willis supply by their central and cortical branches to the brain substances. Okay, so you can see here there is a anterior commissure artery, then anterior cerebral artery. This is internal carotid artery, then middle cerebral artery, posterior communicating artery, posterior cerebral artery, basilar artery, and vertebral artery. Okay, so main arteries, they form circle of Willis. Now venous drainage of the brain. Cerebral hemisphere has two sets of veins, superficial and deep. Veins draining the brain open into the various dural venous sinuses, and ultimately blood from all these sinuses reaches the sigmoid sinus, which become continuous with the two internal jugular veins. Now veins of cerebral hemisphere. The veins of cerebral hemisphere consist of two sets. Superficial vein drain into neighboring venous sinuses, and deep veins of cerebral hemisphere are two internal cerebral veins and two basal veins. The internal cerebral veins join to great cerebral veins, and basal veins end in great cerebral vein, which in turn ends in straight sinus. Now cerebral blood flow. Normal blood flow. Brain is very rich in blood supply. Interruption of blood flow only for 5 to 10 seconds cause loss of consciousness and circulatory arrest. 3 to 4 minutes interruption leads to irreversible brain damage. Normal cerebral blood flow in adult averages 50 to 65 ml per 100 gram, or about 750 to 900 ml per minute. Thus, brain receives approximately 50% of the total resting cardiac output. Normal oxygen consumption. Total oxygen consumption of brain is approximately 50 ml per minute. Oxygen consumption of grey matter is much more. It is about 3 ml per 100 gram tissue per minute than white matter. It is only 0.3 ml per 100 gram tissue per minute. Distribution of blood. Major cerebral arteries are not end arteries, as they anastomosis at circle of Willis. Because of this, blood flows adequately to different parts of the brain. Normally, blood from each carotid artery is distributed largely to the same side of the brain, and very little mixing occurs between the two circulation, because pressure gradient is normally not present due to equal blood pressure on the two sides. So major cerebral arteries supply the brain tissue through following branches: central branches and cortical branches. Now these central branches are end arteries. They do not anastomosis with each other. So thrombosis or rupture of any of them cause infarction. While cortical branches of anterior, middle and posterior cerebral arteries supplying the surface of hemisphere overlap, forming border zones between the areas supplied by these arteries. Now, measurement of cerebral blood flow. By following methods, we can measure cerebral blood flow. KT methods. Principle is based on Fick's principle. By using a radioactive substance, another method is SPECT. It is known as a single photon emission computed tomography. Principle is blood flow to the region of the brain is measured from the clearance curve of inert radioactive tracer. PET, it is positron emission tomography. It is another method for measurement. And MRI, it is magnetic resonant imaging. So there are 4 methods for measurement of cerebral blood flow. Now, regulation of cerebral blood flow. So there are metabolic regulation, autoregulation, role of intracranial pressure in regulation, and nervous regulation. So we will discuss one by one. First, metabolic regulation. Blood flow in individual segment of the brain changes within seconds in response to local neuronal activity, and this change in blood flow is related to the level of metabolism. So important metabolic factors which play important role are carbon dioxide, partial pressure of oxygen, and potassium ions. Now, what is the role of carbon dioxide? Partial pressure of carbon dioxide is the most potent vasodilator of cerebral blood vessels, which increase in partial pressure of carbon dioxide, there occurs linear increase in cerebral blood flow because it causes vasodilation of cerebral blood vessel. When arterial PCO2 increases above 80 mmHg, no further increase in cerebral flow occurs due to maximal dilatation of the blood vessel. Similarly, when arterial PCO2 falls below the 20 mmHg, there occurs no further decrease in cerebral blood flow due to cerebral venoconstriction. Now, effect of H plus ions, hydrogen ions on cerebral blood flow. When there is a rise in partial pressure of carbon dioxide, it leads to carbon dioxide diffusion through blood-brain barrier. So, carbon dioxide reaches to the CSF, cerebrospinal fluid. So, in CSF, CO2 combines with the water to form carbonic acid, H2CO3, which partially dissociate to form H plus ion. And H plus ion causes cerebral vasodilatation in proportion to their concentration. Okay, so it increases the blood flow. Now, partial pressure of oxygen. A slight fall in partial pressure of oxygen causes vasodilatation and produces increase in a cerebral blood flow. Any stimuli which either reduces oxygen supply to the brain or increases oxygen need of the brain result in rapid formation of adenosine, which is potent dilator of pile arterioles. Inhalation of hyperbaric oxygen causes cerebral vasoconstriction and thus cerebral blood flow decreases. Potassium ions. Increase in potassium concentration in CSF following hypoxia, electrical stimulation of the brain, seizure causes rapid increase in a cerebral blood flow. Autoregulation of cerebral blood flow, another mechanism. Due to autoregulation, cerebral blood flow remains nearly constant between 60 to 140 mm of Hg blood pressure. When blood pressure falls below 60 mm Hg, cerebral blood flow becomes extremely compromised and syncope may result. When blood pressure rises above 140 mm Hg, there may occur disruption of blood-brain barrier due to stretching, and cerebral edema or cerebral hemorrhage may result. Now, role of intracranial pressure in regulation of cerebral blood flow. The intracranial pressure level regulates the cerebral blood flow by following mechanism. So there are two mechanisms. One is Monro-Kelly doctrine and another is Cushing reflex. So what is Monro-Kelly doctrine? According to this doctrine, The brain and CSF and blood in cerebral vessels are three elements enclosed in a rigid cranial cavity. And when any of them increases, it is at the expense of other two. This relationship helps to maintain cerebral blood flow when changes in arterial blood pressure occur at the level of head as explained below. So when body is accelerated upwards, it is known as a positive G. When body is accelerated upwards, blood moves towards the feet and arterial pressure at the level of head decreases, and theoretically the cerebral blood flow should be severely compromised. However, practically it does not occur. So because due to gravity, the venous pressure and intracranial pressure are also decreased, and so the pressure on the vessel is decreased, thus blood flow is less severely affected. When body is accelerated downwards, negative G, the reverse occurs. Arterial pressure at the level of head increases, and theoretically the cerebral vessel could have ruptured. However, practically it does not occur. So because due to negative G, intracranial pressure also rises, which supports the vessel and prevents them from rupturing. Another mechanism is Cushing reflex. When intracranial pressure is increased and become equal to the arterial pressure, it compresses the arteries in the brain. So blood supply to vasomotor area is compromised. Okay, so and due to this there is hypoxia and hypercapnia produced, locally increases the discharge from the vasomotor center. As a result, a rise in systemic pressure tends to restore cerebral blood flow. The rise in blood pressure is proportionate to rise in intracranial pressure up to a certain limit, beyond which cerebral circulation ceases. This effect, which protects the vital center in the brain, is called the Cushing reflex. Increase in the blood pressure also causes reflex bradycardia via baroreceptor response. Thus, bradycardia is an important feature of raised intracranial pressure. Now, nervous regulation of cerebral blood flow. Cerebral blood vessels are innervated by noradrenergic vasoconstrictor fibers and cholinergic vasodilator fibers. Under normal conditions, vasomotor nerves do not regulate the cerebral blood flow. But condition like in severe hypertension, noradrenergic sympathetic nerves causes vasoconstriction and reducing cerebral blood flow. This prevents cerebral vascular hemorrhage, stroke, and also protects integrity of blood-brain barrier, which gets disrupted at high blood pressure. In severe hypotension, the cholinergic sympathetic vasodilator nerves play important role in maintaining the cerebral blood flow. Thank you.